So back in February, I posted a video where I showed you how to make Harry Potter style wands out of chopsticks and model magic and paint. And this particular one that I made, I ended up thinking I didn't really model it after a specific character or a specific design idea, but I ended up thinking that it looks like a wand that a Hufflepuff character might use, maybe even Helga Hufflepuff herself. And that got me thinking about the Hogwarts founders and the Hogwarts houses, and kind of wanting to design wands inspired by them. So that's what I'm going to be showing you in this video, how I designed and created wands for the 4 founders of Hogwarts. Now, Pottermore, or it's not called, I keep calling it Pottermore because that's what it was when I used it more, but wizardingworld.com has an illustration of Salazar Slytherin's wand. It came out with all of the Ilvermorny stuff back when the first Fantastic Beasts movie was coming out. I'm not going to try and duplicate that, so I suppose in that way these are going to be more wands inspired by the Hogwarts houses as opposed to wands of the Hogwarts founders. But in any case, I'm doing it the same way that I did last time. I've got chopsticks. I'm going to use model magic to do designs on them, like the way that I did the handle of this one, for instance. And then when it's done, I'm going to paint it and decorate it and everything. So the first one that I want to do is the Gryffindor wand. And what I want to do with that one is to make it look a little bit like a sword. If you'll remember in the previous video, I went to a lot of trouble to make this one look like it's made out of larch, because larch is the wood that I got when I took the official wand quiz. So this one I want to make look like it's made out of aspen. And so when I paint it, I'm going to use a very light color. And if I'm using a very light color, I thought it might be cool to try and make it look a little bit like a sword, because, you know, there's the whole Sword of Gryffindor thing. So I'm going to try and design the handle so that it looks a little bit like a sword. Ravenclaw is associated with the element of air. The 4 houses were inspired by the 4 classical elements: earth, air, water, and fire. So I want to create a pattern that kind of reflects that. This isn't meant to be like an elder wand thing with the way that I'm doing this, but it's meant to, it's a little bit similar, but what I'm going to do is end up connecting this and this once they dry. And then for the Slytherin one, I'm not imitating the image from wizardingworld.com. You can tell what I'm making here, right? Alright, so that's all for now. I will be back in a bit when the model magic dries to put some more detail work in with the model magic. And then when that's done, we'll paint. I added a few more little embellishments, and this one I've definitely worked on quite a bit more since the last time that I filmed. The Slytherin one is pretty much the same. The snake has dried really well. So now what I'm going to do is paint the base color of the wand. I'm going to start with the Gryffindor one. What I want to do is make it look like aspen. According to the information that was released on Pottermore back when it first launched and they had the wand quiz and everything, aspen makes really good dueling wands. So I'm going to use a very pale brown color because aspen is such a pale brown that it's almost white. And I'm going to take a relatively big brush. I'm actually not really happy with how that came out. So I think to make it lighter and to make it look a little bit more like what I was hoping for, I'm actually going to mix just a tiny bit of silver into it. This came off as I was painting it, so I'm going to have to glue that back on. But I will do that later. Alright, moving on to the next one. I want the Ravenclaw wand to be made out of walnut. Walnut is kind of a medium brown. According to the article that I was talking about earlier, walnut is often the kind of wood that chooses very intelligent witches and wizards. Slytherin wand. Now, according to J.K. Rowling in the Ilvermorny article, Slytherin's wand was made out of snakewood. But snakewood has a very unique kind of pattern that I don't have any interest in trying to duplicate and probably couldn't if I wanted to. So, basically every Slytherin character in the Harry Potter movies has a black wand. No matter what it's supposed to be made out of, whether it's hawthorn or walnut, or in many cases we don't know, almost every Slytherin character has a black wand. So, that's what we're going to go with. And to make this a little bit easier, because I don't want the snake to be black, and I think it will be very hard to paint over, we're going to separate them. Alright, and then the handle of this one, I want to be gold. Because, you know, Gryffindor, gold. So here's what I have so far. Now, as you may know from the other video, if you've watched it, I don't do just one coat of paint and then be done. I'm actually going to go back through when they're dry and do more detail work, do more different blending of colors and details to make it look like real wood, and just to kind of embellish it and give it an artistic flair. So the paint is dry. First thing I want to do is paint this. On this wand, I want to use bronze on the handle, but unfortunately, I don't have a bronze color. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take metallic gold again, and I'm going to take some light brown, and I'm going to mix those together. Could stand to be a little bit darker. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is these parts of it, I'm going to paint bronze. This one I'm just going to leave the solid color because it's meant to be painted anyway, and I think this is a good look for it. But then I need to paint this. So I've got 2 shades of green paint, and I'm going to use those to paint the snake. First, a nice base coat in this dark green color. So I've got the green snake, and I figured I should use the other Hogwarts house colors on their respective wands as well. So let's start with blue. In between these, I'm going to paint it blue. Let's see if I can do that. I think the snake is probably dry enough that I can do another round with the dark green paint. Red on this one because I've used the house colors on the other 2, and the Hufflepuff one as well. I didn't use yellow or black, but I used gold, and gold sort of has a yellow look to it. So I want this one to have some red and gold. Let's see. Gryffindor represents the element of fire, and because I did the handle of Ravenclaws to kind of give an air look, I want to do something similar with a design that looks a little bit suggestive of fire. So as of right now, this is what I've got. One thing that I want to do now, this I feel like I meant for it to look like fire, but it looks a little bit disturbingly like blood, and I want to kind of try and make that not be the case. So, I think if I do some different shading to make it look like a flickering fire, like it's a painted on design, you know, of fire. And so what I want to do is I want to mix some red and some gold to make like a metallic orange color if I can. Yeah, that works. And then I can mix more gold into it as I go to get it lighter. So I'm gonna, just like I did before, alright, and then I'm gonna let this dry. I think that already looks a whole lot more like fire, but then I'm gonna go over it when it's dry with some accents in actual gold and actual red to give it that definition again, the shape of the flames. The next thing that I want to do is with this one, I really like how the handle came out, but I want to work a little bit on the rest of the wand. It's very plain right now. Yesterday I made a bronze color using a little bit of brown and a little bit of gold. And I want to see if I can replicate that to do some work on the wand. I still have some work I want to do on the snake. I don't want that to be a solid color. I want to do a little bit with a light blue on this one. Places on the Slytherin wand where the black paint has gotten chipped or smudged, or just like I had other colors of paint on my finger. Like, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of gold on it right here. I don't want that. I want it to actually be a very solid black, and so I'm going to go over that. So this is how they're looking now. There is one more thing that I want to do to this, which is to paint eyes on the snake. I do want it to be clear that it's meant to be a snake and not just, you know, a little green squiggly thing wrapped around it. I'm not going to do a forked tongue, but I'm going to do eyes. So this one is done now, as far as the paint goes at least. This one, there's still something I'm just not quite satisfied with about it. And I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I wonder... The handle, I think I've done everything I can with. The handle, I like. It's this, I think, that is going to be a little bit trickier to get right. I like the look of it. I like that I went with kind of a very pale, almost white-brown color. And I like that I did the silver accents because it's supposed to look, it's designed to look kind of like a sword because, you know, Sword of Gryffindor and whatnot. But I feel like it just doesn't quite look right. It doesn't have enough of a bold, in-your-face kind of look. It's a very understated, I mean, even despite the handle being the way that it is, very plain and understated compared to the others that I've done. Alright, there we go. I think that's how I want it to be. I think it's done now. Now that the paint is dry, the last thing that I need to do is use a sealer so that it won't chip away. It dries clear and glossy, so it'll give it a nice polished wood look. So I decided I wasn't entirely happy with how this one had come out, and instead of just painting on a kind of swirly pattern, I wanted to do it three-dimensional. So here we go, and we're going to paint it. I'm going to start off trying to imitate that mixture of red and gold that I used on the handle. Dark shadows in the nooks and crannies to give it more of a three-dimensional look. I mean, it is, three-dimensional, but it just adds a nice touch, I think. It's also good because I need to touch up some of the areas where the red paint got on the wand, or where the red and gold from what I had done before is still showing through. And that'll be easier to do in a darker color as opposed to the very light brown that I used for the majority of it. Alright, I think that'll do it. I like this much better now than I did the first time I tried it. I think that the three-dimensional look definitely adds something to it. So these are the 4 wands as they ended up. Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff. I'm just going to kind of move the camera along them so that you can see up close how they came out. Unused chopsticks left over, so if you can think of a Harry Potter character whose wand we haven't seen and you'd like to know what I think it would look like, let me know in the comments down below and I just might make a video about it.